symbol on the screen. There you go.
That's it.
All right.
All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening and for the glorious weather we've had these last 2 days. We pray that you bless us in this work session as we consider issues that need to be resolved or dealt with in the borough. We thank you for the way that you've guided us so far this year, and it's been challenging times, and yet we see ourselves on the other side of the pandemic. So thank you for that, and we ask that you would continue to bless our employees, bless our first responders, our police officers, and help them as they continue to do their work on behalf of the borough. Thank you for all the citizens who do volunteer their services. So bless us tonight, and may we have a productive meeting. In Jesus' name we pray.
All right, pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. Mr. Crouch, Mr. Darius, Mrs. Deal. Present. Mr. Erickson.
Present.
Mr. Sinkovich. Present. Mr. Cowan. Here. All right, any citizen comments, Fred? None?
I have one. There was nothing in the book. I'd like to wish the Penners a happy 25th wedding anniversary.
What a better way.
Yeah.
It's at a meeting and I'm at a meeting. so.
Time flies.
She wouldn't take back another day. She'd do it all
Did
day.
you warn your wife you were posting that picture?
I never warned her to do things.
You post that picture every
I do
year.
it every year, so she knows what's
With a
going on.
little bit of different saying, but same picture.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you, Joey. All right, let's get into legal matters. Discuss the status of the subdivision plan for the new municipal building.
Scott,
Yes.
I just wanted to remind you, I sent you a note. I've got to get off at 8 o'clock
Okay.
Eastern time for a conflict I have here.
Okay. I thought you said 7 o'clock, and I'm like, well, you're not going to be on because we don't start this.
You know, I'm 2 hours away. I'm 2 hours off, so I don't know what I'm saying, but it's I'm pretty sure it's going to be 8 o'clock your time.
Okay, that sounds good. Hopefully, we're wrapping up by then. So, knock on wood.
Subject plan, I made an inquiry today, and I'm going to get a call back tomorrow. I was hoping to have it last week, but we'll find out. I'll keep on our surveyor engineer who's working on this. And,
Okay.
let you know.
All right.
I have a question. Next week is planning commission. Will this be presented at the planning commission meeting?
I would certainly like them to have a first look at it. I don't think is it urgent that we get a decision next week?
On contractors that we have taken bids that are starting to ask me.
I'll talk to their solicitor about it. We can get it, and I'll talk tomorrow.
The next question I have is, who is going to present this for them? Will the borough be required to be the planning commission? Be presenting in growth? Is this going to be presented by Mr. Burke?
Well, I imagine he'll be there. I could also be there.
Well, I know we have two members of the planning commission who are councilmen. Would it be a conflict for them to answer questions on this? No, they don't really have to excuse themselves. The planning commission members will.
It's their advisory board, the planning commission, so, and it's, the plans are transparent, so it shouldn't make any difference at all. Who participates at planning commission level versus our level. If it were a contentious thing, but it's not, so it is what it is. So we just need to have we need to be able to answer questions. So yeah, the one who's done the plan is going to be to do the best job presenting it. But,
I'm just thinking there will be questions, and there should not be, about what is the product, what does it consist of, how much the cost, who's paying for it, things like that are not relevant to the subdivision.
No, and we don't know about that. We simply know this is the way we plan to divide up the area that's involved.
Okay. Anything else for subdivision? All right, number 2, discuss proposed ordinance to decriminalize marijuana use in the borough of Newville.
Where did that come from?
That's a great question. So we had a communication from a William Garland, who has, I guess, worked in this with Carlisle Borough and other places. So it was at his request. He is not a borough resident, although he is from the Newville area. So, that's where it came from. So,
I'd suggest that we refer this to our administrative committee and perhaps the Joey's committee. I mean, it's going to impact life, and that they explore this with our police, the various aspects. Does he feel that an ordinance like this would help or hurt their drug enforcement efforts? And I think it's like anything else. When people, even out of the borough, present ideas, we have a duty to at least look at them. I don't think we should feel rushed. I don't think we should feel pressured.
Do we know what his intentions are, or why he even brings it to the borough? We know that.
I do with my conversation that I had with him. Let me start with what it's not. What it does not do is make marijuana legal. It doesn't do anything like that. What it does do is it reduces the fines and it reduces the charge from a felony. Is it a felony?
Well, it depends on the amount I mentioned.
Well, it reduces like the small amounts to a misdemeanor. And so theoretically, his rationale, and a lot of people who agree with this, their rationale is that somebody gets pulled over and they have a small amount of marijuana. They shouldn't be damned for life for this. Because, once you have that felony, you're checking that box on application, rental, that kind of stuff. That's really all this does. I've told them calling it decriminalization does not help your cause because it makes it sound like you're taking the criminal part of it out of it. Joey?
Randy, what's your feelings on this?
Well, I will echo what Scott said. It doesn't make it legal. Gives the police department the option of issuing a summary level non-traffic citation in lieu of a criminal prosecution. However, the legalization of recreational marijuana rests with the legislature and the governor. And at this point, although there's been some indicators that the governor would be in favor, there have been no indicators from the legislature that they are in favor. So until it comes to a vote, I'm not saying that decriminalizing it here would be jumping the gun. But it's, as Scott said, it's not going to have a dramatic effect on the future outcome because it certainly doesn't rest with the Newville Borough Council or the Carlisle Borough Council. It rests with the legislature.
Okay.
Yeah. The other angle that he was bringing up is that, and I did check with our police department, and they've said that this has not been an issue here. But people get pulled over with, and they have their medical marijuana cards, and they still have possession of it. They were still getting, felonies and those kinds of things, and then they have to spend thousands of dollars in lawyer fees to get those things taken away. Now, our police department said that as soon as they show the card, unless they're under the influence while they're driving, they don't, they just let them go. It doesn't prevent, like, if you're pulled over and, they smell marijuana and then they find, a block of, or I don't know what you call it, a brick of cocaine or meth or all of that stuff is still on the table. This is strictly really about, somebody has, I think it's under 30 grams. I don't know, it says in here, it says anything under a certain amount. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, 30, under 30 grams is possession of a small amount for personal use.
Am I correct that there is a threshold that above a certain amount is considered with intent to distribute or something anyway?
Yes. And today, it's just very rare that there's a criminal prosecution for a small amount unless Pennsylvania is one of the states that has a defined limit of THC in the blood system to be considered DUI. The only time you see a prosecution for a small amount is when it's attached to a DUI charge also.
Mike, you are in the trucking business. If recreational marijuana becomes the way to go, legal, what's that going to do to your truck drivers?
It's still a federal violation, and so that will not affect, they're still subject to those regulations. So if they are caught with any possession, from my understanding, even a medical card does not exempt the truck drivers, because it's still illegal at the federal level. And
if it's in their system or if they're in possession.
So
that overrides the state.
yep. Because the DOT hours of service, most of the other regulations that govern trucking are federal regulations. So,
But
they're enforced by the states, but
if the actual use among truckers goes up of marijuana, because it's quote unquote legalized, I think we should restrict ourselves from 81, because quite frankly, it's not going to be, to think of guys being under the influence of marijuana driving trucks, it's not good. Of course, your guys would never do that.
There's more out there than going on that we know about.
So I've worked in some places where there are guys that would, and I'm not too sure the one place there wasn't a guy that did, but nobody ever caught him that. But
one other thing is going back to, you have to check boxes, even if you have a recreational card. A lot of
You mean a medical card?
Medical card. I'm not recreational. Medical card. Yeah.
I don't know where you're
You don't know where you're gonna be.
Is that part of the summer program you're getting at?
The medical card. Even if you have a medical card, a lot of businesses now are requiring you to check, because apparently there's a database that they can go and check to see, Frank has a medical marijuana card, and you can't lie about it because they can check against it, and people aren't getting jobs because of that.
and there's good reason for that, because a lot of, especially if they're working in place
Sure.
subject to any federal guidelines, whether it's air cargo, trucking stuff, random drug tests are a requirement. So if they don't have a medical card,
My only The only thing I agree with on this is that I don't feel like it should be something that ruins a person's life, you know.
And they shouldn't use them.
Well, I think we could go around this table and we could all say that we've all made a mistake or two in life, and we shouldn't be damned for the rest of our life. So that's really all, that's the only angle I can see. But I'd be also interested to talk with some folks from Carlisle, from their council or Mayor Scott or whoever, because their ordinance is a pilot, and I'd be interested to hear what their thoughts are. I do know that the chief and the police department was to reach out to Carlisle Police to see if it's had any impact on what they do. I can tell you when I put that in the email a couple weeks ago, that their response was it wouldn't impact what they do, because very rarely do they charge somebody with that right now. That meth is the big problem. So do you want to refer it to committee, or it doesn't matter to me?
I think
Yeah, I guess which committees, because I guess the state, if we're talking the police department, safety committee should be
As I said,
probably part of that.
yeah, public safety should be part of that.
Well, part of it, but I think Joey's
Sure, absolutely.
capable of running with the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to bring in somebody from Carlisle?
Well, let's let her decide.
Okay.
Yeah,
After you talk to the police and after you,
right.
and then we get as a whole decide, you know.
So let's have a motion to refer it to the Quality of Life Committee. Do you want to include public safety on that as well, or?
You can copy public safety.
Who's all part of the public safety?
Okay.
That's it?
It should be others, but that's what it is right now.
Okay.
I didn't catch the name. Who's on it, Scott?
Bob Darius is.
Okay.
Well, we can nominate Joey to be part of the public safety committee. And just refer it.
It might amount to the same difference. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's just start it with
Okay.
Joey, and I'm sure Joey's gonna you'll pull in
Yeah.
different groups that
Right,
need to come in.
right.
So, all right, so do we have a motion to refer the ordinance to decriminalize marijuana to the Quality of Life Committee?
so
It's been moved, is it seconded?
Second.
All those in favor say, or any other discussion? Sorry, didn't mean to tease you.
Yeah, do we want to reword the, even the name of the ordinance, reducing,
Reducing penalty,
reducing the criminal,
right,
this,
I think.
but
quality
we
of
know
life.
what we, yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. That's the first time I referred one to a committee. All right.
Unique.
What's that?
Lucky me.
Not a hot topic at all, Joey. All right, item number 3, discuss proposed ordinance 2021-04, amending the borough's open container law.
I had not calculated the fact that there was a holiday for my staff and for myself. So I have not gotten the draft ready, but I have done a resolution. I don't know if you saw this yet.
I seen it, it was in my email, but I didn't.
Well, here's a copy of it. Anybody
Way
need a
down
copy
here.
here? Can you throw it? Well,
There's a copy of it
I was
there. if you all
gonna
have it.
say, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
And basically what it does is it simply says, look, we have an event coming up on Friday, July 30th. I think it's a concert, isn't it?
Yeah.
From 6 to 8 p.m. And we're saying since the alcohol referendum is passed, which now permits the sale and use of alcoholic beverages pursuant to liquor control board regulations and public events. Oh, the Borough of Newville Borough Council directs the Borough Newville Police Department to suspend the enforcement of the open drinking ordinance. And I attached that ordinance to the resolution. So that I think we cover the upcoming event. So what we want to see with this ordinance is to say, we want to basically see how it goes. But, and I probably don't want to adopt any ordinance until we see how it goes. But, you know, we're basically saying, look, we want to go carefully and slowly on this, but we'd rather not see the open container ordinance that's been in effect for a while, since 1980, enforced for this event.
So let me ask you this, is it going to be written up as for this event only?
Yeah, this resolution is only for this event.
But see, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer.
No.
And I'm not a prude because I will have a glass of wine. I will even have a beer. But I just think we're opening up a can of worms because they're gonna say, somebody's gonna come along and say, okay, you did it for this event. So, you know, why can't we do it for this event or that event? And personally, it's 2 hours. And it's supposed to be a family-oriented thing. And I don't think we need to have alcohol at it, you know? I just don't. And who's going to enforce how many drinks that a person's gonna have? You know, you could.
Well, there are regulations on whoever's serving it.
Right, but, okay? No, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, all right? Say Gary and I go up to this event, and I'm not planning to drink anything, but he's going up and getting, you know, 1 or 2 drinks for himself, and then he looks at me and he goes, well, you can go up and get me 1 or 2 drinks. Or he, you know what I'm saying? Just because they're not, that one person isn't going and getting the drinks for themselves, they could be getting other people to get drinks for them.
Well, I mean, it doesn't I mean, you still can't have public drunkenness
Right.
and that kind of stuff.
And we certainly want police at the event themselves to monitor things, but I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a big drinker personally, and although I do have wine and understand it, I think I have wine in my house. I don't have any beer at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
But the reality is, I never had any alcohol around my kids
Mhm.
while they were at home.
Yeah.
Now they're adults and they can make their own decisions that way. But I certainly don't want to see widespread bad behavior at these events because of alcohol.
Yeah.
And that's why before we actually adopted any sort of resolution or ordinance about this for the future events, I want to work carefully with the police, and it's like if there are problems that are created by having alcohol at public events in the borough, I want them to be addressed before we simply say, yeah, it's always okay.
Are there other,
To me, this is like a test case. What do you, what's the mayor think? What do you think, Jack?
Randy, did you want to speak first? Or?
If you remember at the last meeting, the chief made a request for events like this to have an extra officer on duty to mingle and interact with the public. And that in and of itself will act as a deterrent. And anyone who went there with the intent to just get loaded, it just isn't going to work. Um, we don't know if there'll be any kind of issues until we try it.
Right.
And one of the reasons we put the alcohol initiative on the ballot was for these type of events. And it, frankly, if we have a bad experience, then we reassess that. But I don't think that we should be overly concerned about, well, what if there's an incident? Well, if that was our prevailing attitude, we wouldn't have anything. I mean, we wouldn't have Fountain Festival, we wouldn't have the car show, we wouldn't, if we're constantly afraid something might happen. And going to something that Scott said, even the wineries, when they set up at an event, their employees are required to have the LCB ramp training. They themselves can lose their license for serving visibly intoxicated people. And so we need to give it a try. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's a great statement. I would subscribe to all that. We might want to, I don't know, does Carlisle have that kind of open container exception under certain circumstances? Maybe we should talk to another town that does it to see, if they've had any issues. But I think absent that, I think Randy's statement was very good.
Now, does this apply only to what is being sold at the event, or can people bring containers?
I think this does not limit. Well, it says permits the sale and use.
We talked about the referendum against the sale and use.
Right.
Pursuant to the liquor control board regulations.
Yeah, I don't think it prevents somebody from bringing. That's how I would read the ordinance. It doesn't necessarily prevent somebody from bringing.
Although I think that if people bring their own to the event, anybody, wineries or a beer distributor who has a license to do this public event would be kind of discouraged. Right. Not actually doing that.
Yeah.
And
I think you do lose the level of control then too. I mean, if it's just being sold by someone who's licensed to distribute it and approved to be there, I think it's, have a lot more control over the situation than if it's just anybody can bring what they want and do anything they want with it.
But what if somebody doesn't drink wine and, they want to bring a 6-pack of beer? How are you going to stop them?
I think your ordinance reflects that you can't bring anything, but you can, can be sold there by whoever's licensed to sell it for that particular event.
Well, and we'll see if there are problems. There are problems, and we'll have to deal with them. It's a precedent that we can't modify.
Right. This applies to one event. It'll be a learning experience.
the other side of that is we're in control. You've only looked at Longshore, right?
Mhm.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's the only
Yeah,
provider.
it's an outdoor event sponsored by the borough, so the rules are ours.
And I agree with Jody on the first thing with, I don't want to be in the business of saying, you can do it, you can't do it. And to me, that's where the ordinance comes in. And once we have a good grasp of that, we can write the ordinance that would reflect that we don't have to, it should be written into the ordinances too. Who can do it? Or when it can be done, right?
Yeah, I'd be absolutely opposed to having trick or treat night with alcohol.
Yeah.
that would be bad.
Well, I think one thing, we shouldn't allow anybody to bring anything in, because you can't control somebody who's sitting out and drinking their house for 2 or 3 hours or whatever, and sneak in. I was a heavy drinker, so I know what you can do with alcohol while I drink.
Can we, in this ordinance or the resolution, can we specify only beverages served by Long Shot Winery? Just for this
That
one?
would just solely have to be that.
I think that would make sense.
I don't know how if the actual enforcement of that concept, how the police would handle that.
I mean, obviously, if somebody's walking down with a 6 case of beer, you know they can get it there.
Well, you probably have it in a cooler.
Right. Yeah.
Or a gallon jug.
Right. And
Yeah.
to be honest, people, even if we don't allow
Right.
this, they're
Yeah.
gonna figure it out. We had a bluegrass concert one time at church, and one of the ladies from the church snuck back around the corner and opened up a bottle of wine and filled up her container and went back out and sat down. You know, and that she was fine. There was no, she wasn't doing anything. But, yeah.
Well, I would certainly say that, I don't know if we have to put this in the resolution, but I think it's going to be pretty obvious only one person is selling anything like that. And again, this is limited to the area, the time in the area, and the area is just 2 streets. Big Spring Avenue and West Streets.
You can do a lot in that area, Marcus. I just think, my personal opinion, if we're gonna have it, we should sell it there, and that's it.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there are problems of enforcement, of course. But it is if it's part of the ordinance, then it gives the police another tool to manage the process. They can approach people who are carrying a gallon jug of wine and saying, where did you get that? You know, I mean, they're obviously not going to get it in a small glass from a licensed vendor there. They brought it in. It's quantity, so that can be managed. There's some people that will find a way around it. People always do in every situation, but I think if we have in place a reasonable provision that allows for, you know, sale on a limited basis and nobody bringing their own, then the police have a way of helping to control that.
What's the name of the server, the organization? I'm going to add a line that says, or a phrase that says, for any alcohol provided by Long Shot Winery. Okay? So it's the winery alcohol that we are suspending the open container. Okay? That's no big deal. It doesn't matter. I thought we could discuss it tonight and adopt it at our end of the June meeting. And still, if the police know it's coming, they still know what to do. And again, this is sort of like our trial balloon to see. Again, the whole idea, I am against alcoholism, I'm against alcohol abuse personally. But this is an attempt to see whether or not citizens of Newville can be responsible in doing sort of things and helping that. I have seen concerts, bluegrass concerts and other things. Dickinson is a perfect example. If you need to tell me that they don't permit the bluegrass concerts on the Dickinson line alcohol, I would be, I'd win that bet every day because I'm sure there is. But I've seen families there. I've never seen anything that seemed to be even close to this behavior. So, and I don't know if they get new eyes from people leaving it late at night because they're there all day. You know, so I think Newville people can be as responsible as anybody else can be. But if they're not, I'm not gonna open the floodgates on day one. I want to see how it goes. How responsible they can be. So yeah, we'll see for any alcohol provided by the lawn shop.
Everybody good with addressing that at the end of the month?
Yes.
All right. Good. Anything else on that topic? Anything else, Mark?
No, we'll keep you informed on how the municipal voting is going.
I'm gonna pop down to EDA so that way Jack can leave whenever he needs to. So do you have anything, Jack, for E EDA?
Nothing really new since we talked last week, unless there are questions anybody has about it, about anything.
Anybody? No? No? I don't know if I,
Okay.
Advisory committee is supposed to meet on Tuesday. Was anybody using this room on Tuesday?
Next week,
Yeah.
Monday night, we have a meeting, right?
Okay.
all right. And back up to administration, Michael, item number 1.
I am going to defer to Fred on 4 of these. We talked about them a little bit, but I do not have the details.
So, once again, the controlling factor on the healthcare coverage is the provision contained in the current collective bargaining agreement with the police officers, and that is that it must be a PPO plan through Capital Blue Cross. We try to keep as close to the prescription and the copay requirements, and we have basically been reimbursing the officers for the difference in cost between their contract and what our plan currently provides for. And the officers submit a bill for their additional copay charges, and the general fund reimburses them. So that really narrows, what we can do in terms of our approval of the healthcare coverage. There are many options for us, but without going into renegotiating the contract and getting the consent of the bargaining unit, we're very limited. So, a couple factors. Number one, our renewal date is July 1. Surprisingly, our current cost of coverage is $18,123 a month, and our renewal with Capital Blue Cross is only going up about $600 and some dollars a month to $18,792. So we did not see as high an increase as we've seen in previous years. Looking at the other Capital Blue plans, there is another PPO 500, which has similar deductibles, and that is slightly less. It's actually just $1 more a month than what we're paying now. And then you get into the Geisinger and Highmark Blues and so forth. And again, unless it's a Capital Blue plan, we are very limited in what we can go with. So I don't know if anyone has looked at the breakdown from Benefit Connections, if you have any preferences or anything that you'd like to look at or discuss in more detail.
So Fred, the employee copay, is that what comes out of paychecks?
Yes, that's what is deducted from our employees' pay.
So that's our premium share.
And you see a breakdown there, the cost.
And the two that we would be looking at to compare would be the Capital Blue Cross Gold 500-020, the first column essentially,
Yes.
and the third column, the renewal, and then the column right after that.
Yes.
And I'm trying to see what the difference between those two are. Do our employees pay a deductible as well?
Yeah. The police officers do not pay a deductible.
Is the deductible, does the deductible change between those two plans? Because I don't,
It remains 500 and 1,000 for the Highmark Blue Shield Premier plan, the PPO.
it increases the
And
out of pocket.
yes,
Who pays that out of pocket?
the employee does.
It looks like a little bit higher on office visits, $5, $15, I would mark it around that one. Urgent care, that's the same. Emergency room, $100 more. Prescription, so that's where there's a big difference. So prescription, right now they have no deductible. And the other plan would be $250 individual, $500 family. And then the retail and mail is almost double. I'm just trying to see, is it worth us switching for $1 increase or a $600 increase? We're staying the same for the $600 increase.
That's where we have been, Scott, for the last few years. We've just stayed with, we've not had complaints from any of the employees that have used the coverage, that have been hospitalized or anything like that. We have in the past switched from some of the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans to things like Aetna. At one point, we went with a Geisinger plan, and it seemed that we had employees who were having coverage rejected, cards were not being accepted. Aetna turned out to be a real mess. I mean, they weren't paying claims, and doctors were just handing the cards back to the employees.
Really, the only one that on that list that's a decent savings is UPMC one. Everything, well, some of them are even more expensive.
Now, since UPMC is pretty widely accepted now through Cumberland County with so many healthcare providers, maybe the plan should be to free up with capital.
Right, and
then sit down and open a discussion with your officers about some of the UPMC plans to see if maybe next year we could make a change.
yeah, there's no point moving everybody else and keeping the police on capital.
We've tried to explore that. We tried to keep two plans, one for police and our benefit connection people tell us we can't.
So you have to negotiate another plan in the next contract.
Which we're gonna have.
UPMC is a savings in the premium. However, if you look at the costs out of pocket, they're higher.
Probably.
And I think for those paying for the insurance is going to be a wash in the total cost. I think you're better off staying with the Blue Cap or Blue Cross, simply because Blue Cross Blue Shield is accepted anywhere in the country without any problem. UPMC will not be. So I can tell you from personal experience, if you're traveling and need to use insurance, you want to have something that you don't have a hassle with.
Well, it didn't matter during the pandemic, but traveling again.
Do you need a motion tonight it's
We
not.
should have, you should give me some direction so that, I mean, we can wrap it up at the end of the month, but I know our benefit connections would like to get things tied down with Capital Blue. I mean, you can give me a direction to go on, and we can wrap it up at the June 25th meeting officially, or I'm sorry, the June 29th meeting.
Is your vision, is it with Capital Blue also?
Davis Vision is
Davis.
what we have, and United Concordia. Now, those are solely paid for by
Yeah.
the borough only provides medical and prescription.
Okay. I make a motion that we stay with basically the same as what we have.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to stay with what we have and accept the renewal for Capital Blue Cross Gold. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. There you go, your direction.
Okay, thank you.
Next item, bid tabulations.
When we opened bids on May 25th, we had one bidder return, and that was New Enterprise. But unfortunately, they returned with a much higher price as well. Their bid currently is $195,785, which includes us scaling back on our scope of work. So if we had not scaled back, we would be over 200,000. So what happened from 1 month to the next? Oil price. It's reflective in the asphalt. It's reflective in the emulsion oil. It's reflective in the trucking costs. It's reflected in the milling. It's reflective in the concrete delivery costs. It's right across the board in the contract. And what you see here is a lot of uncertainty as to what the fuel costs would be at the time of this bid. Now, the pipeline is back in operation again and so forth. But this is where we are. We did lose Slusser. I think Jerry had some issues with the administrative requirements that come with a community development block grant bid. There's a lot of reporting and compliance on the part of the contractor, and I don't think Jerry was eager to accept those responsibilities. So where does this leave us? Well, we had planned to put about $40,000 of borough money into this. We have a $100,000 grant, so we're looking about $56,000 short. So what I've done is sent off an email to the Cumberland County Redevelopment Authority, and I've asked them to do this. If we could do this, if we could take our grant that's been awarded to Parsonage Street this year and combine it with our funding for North Corporation Street, and then have enough to do the job, actually have a little bit of a contingency, maybe $10,000, and not put any borough money into it. And use our borough money to maybe pay for Cove Avenue and some of the side streets that we were looking at. I think that's our only option at this point. And so I've not received a response back from Chris Rafferty, the Director of Community Development, but he should have a response for us by the council meeting. So for now, I would just ask you to take no action on this. If we get the green light to combine our funds. And I will tell you that that is just not the easiest thing to do, because of the fact that, that you're talking two different fiscal years of funding here. The county's going to have to go back and do a couple of things. Number one, they're going to have to get HUD approval to do this. And the second thing is we're going to have to do a program amendment for the county commissioners to approve. So there's quite a bit of administrative work that the county redevelopment authority will have to move in order to make this happen. And so if all that comes into play and is successful, I don't think you would see our ability to spend any of this money until very late August, early September. So it's not going to happen as an early summer project as we had anticipated. But it is what it is, and you know, costs have gone up dramatically in the construction field in the last 60 days.
And this would still be at the reduced work.
Yeah, what we did, Scott, was instead of doing milling across the road, we're milling 4 foot out from our curb to get curb reveal. And we'll blend in, keep the curb reveal, and we'll keep a gutter line for water to flow. But you're going to have a more pronounced crown in that road now, which is a good thing, because that's, I mean, the water is going to drain off and fill out flat areas now where the water lays, and that's why you have breaking up the asphalt. So, but that was our revised scope, and we did eliminate the paving on North Alley, which was part of this, and we did eliminate some of the paving on Cove Avenue, which was part of this project too. So we tried as best we could. What's hurting us here on this project is you have 7 handicap curb crossings. Each of those is anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000. And then you have a lot of drainage in this project. Down around Green Street, there's 5 inlet boxes to be replaced. And so that all adds to the cost of the project.
So you're just saying, let this sit.
You know, the one option would be to reject the bid, and my guess is since you're down to 1 bidder, if you reject again, you're not even going to see the winner price come. So I would say, let the bid set, continue to see what sort of response we get from the redevelopment authority, and if we can merge the 2 project funding documents together, then we have a project. We should know that hopefully by the end of this month.
Next one, letter for the trash collection changes.
At the last meeting, council asked me to prepare a letter to our residents, and I did. I also shared this letter with Southampton Township, along with our trash collection and recycling program guidelines, which these guidelines really go back to the inception of our garbage program in 2011. And some of these have been amended slightly, but not too much in terms of what our customers are used to saying and putting out the trash at certain times. The big changes from parts come at the recycling end. And of course, no glass is now completely banned from the single waste stream. Metal cans, paper, newsprint, cardboard, big cartons, magazines, junk mail, things like that are still allowed, and plastics number 1 through 7 will still be allowed, but glass is no longer acceptable. And we also have a schedule of the holidays for the residents, and so the letter is ready for your approval.
Since Southampton's okay.
Southampton has reviewed it, and they said it was acceptable.
All right. You have a motion to,
Second.
Sure better than $100-some you're paying a couple years ago.
it's been moved and seconded to send the letter out to Newville residents to participate in the trash program. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Sorry, checking to see if there's any question. Item number 4, the proposed American Recovery Act Fund.
So initially, when the funds were announced, the federal government told us you can use this money for anything except cutting taxes and paying for pensions. And then the Treasury Department issued about a 13-page guideline. And the guidelines that I found to be the best, the most concise, were those that were developed by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. And they closely mirror the guidelines that were put out by Treasury. So in putting together a plan, I looked at the guidelines and I came up with a number of areas in which, and these are suggestions. These are just suggestions for you. You have a final say on how to address the use of these funds. But I think the greatest flexibility could be achieved if we can show a maximum loss of revenue. In that you have flexibility to basically use the federal funds to repay yourself. And then you can, what you have then is a surplus that has come into your budget this year, and you could begin to reallocate those funds or just maintain your fund balance, get yourself back on track financially. And so what I did was go through and I was conservative in my estimates. And then I sat down with Jody and Cheryl and we looked at everything, and real estate taxes, we believe we can justify, from the duplicate, what was turned over to Tax Claim Bureau of $25,000. We know our EIT, we've got some pretty good comparisons from our Tax Claim Bureau, and we can document that $20,000. We know occupational taxes, we could probably look at this a little more closely, maybe add another $1,000, but $3,500, I would say, was truly associated with occupational taxes not being paid last year at the end of 2020. Our zoning permits were down slightly, $500. Our non-traffic and traffic fines were down considerably because the chief had put out an order for the officers not to have contact. So, and then they went on to focus on, businesses that were closed and other things they were doing for the pandemic. So just limiting the number of calls and limiting the traffic stops resulted in a decline of traffic fines. And we know by admission from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation that across the board, the motor fuels fund statewide was down, and we saw in our allocation $3,000 less. So in numbers that we can substantiate rather easily, we can show that there was a $56,500 decline in revenues due to the pandemic last year. So that would be the first area that I think council should focus on, is using the ARA money to reimburse yourself for those costs. Mr. Crouch had suggested at the last meeting that we look at giving some sort of a premium pay to our employees. And so throughout the pandemic, the employees were coming to me and asking, are we going to get laid off? Are we going to lose our jobs? The county was shutting down, governments were shutting down, and council gave direction. Keep the employees working, keep their benefits going. And so we did. And so rather than looking at this on an hourly basis and try and fit, I just went with a simple bonus, a one-time bonus Every employee received the same. Every employee that worked during the pandemic and faced the public and the challenges of the pandemic $300. And that includes our police officers, our police clerk, our DPW employees, our plant operators, and our administrative employees. So the total of the one-time bonus would be $8,000.
But there's one employee missing.
So the next category is assistance to
So it's
nonprofit.
$8,500.
Yes.
Yeah, Fred needs his $500.
You know, you're gonna keep it because I want to accept it. I'm still scratching my head why I got, $1,200 bonuses from the federal government. I work, and I don't consider myself sitting behind the desk, an at-risk employee.
But
These other people were out in the field.
But you were here, Fred, just like all these other people, you were here and you deserve it.
And Fred, you and I had conversations about how do we do this without laying somebody off? And if it wouldn't be for you sitting in that seat, we wouldn't have been in that. We'd be in a very different situation.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm just gonna say that this borough came through the pandemic extremely well. Not because of one person, because of the people up on the screen, Jack's gone, Mayor, all of you. How many people came in and made phone calls? Scott, you did, Jack did, Joey. We made phone calls to people to see if they were okay. We came up with ways to raise funds for our organizations that were in need. So it was an effort of many people working together, not one person. And I
But you were the
think
leader.
a facilitator. This borough did an exceptional job of weathering the pandemic, and you all deserve thanks and praise for that. And if we can do this to help our employees, then, I think it's a good thing. The assistance to nonprofit organizations, we can also provide assistance to organizations that are 501c3 nonprofits. And so these are some of the organizations that I think we should focus on. Western Emergency Management. This organization you don't hear about until you really need them, and then the guys come through with everything from pumps to generators and things like that. They were out, during the winter months, helping out with townships and down trees and things like that. And then in the summer months, pumping basements and loading pumps out. And this group truly works on a shoestring. And they're a good group of guys. Everyone is a volunteer. They're all local emergency coordinating, like Mr. Barrett. And if we could give $500 to this group, I think, I know they would put it into, they have a need for new emergency pumps. The Big Spring Food Bank is another organization that really stepped up and did additional deliveries of food, thousands of pounds of food converted to a drive-through. Neighbors in Christ is another organization that helped fill the gap financially for people who needed to pay rent, so many other things. And then our Beautification Society. And somebody would say, well, why would you ever give 500? Well, look at all the food that was harvested. And I don't know, Mayor, we went for a coffee, but I think there were between 4 or 5 harvests of food that went to the Paupex and the food bank. And so I think the Beautification Society is deserving of money to replenish the funds that they put out during the pandemic. And then our Economic Development Authority, the number that I have in mind there is $10,000. And how I think this money could best be used is we have at least 2 businesses right now that have come forward and would like assistance in doing facade grant work. One is Ship Daddy and the other is Bean Yaki. Well, if we could make $2,500 available, that would leverage, I think, around 12,500 in additional county money. So I think that's pretty nice that if we could do that, use this money to leverage a larger grant for these new businesses, I think it sends a strong message to other businesses that are looking at Newville. Hey, look what they're doing. Look what the Borough Council's doing in Newville. And I think anytime we can help our business people maximize grants and so forth, we should try to do that. So that was the idea here, to help these nonprofits through some cash assistance. And this would be a one-time contribution. And that basically covers this year. There's 2 fiscal years of funding. You will have money, according to the news program on the weekend, Senator Jake Sparkman was on the cost. Senator Costa was on. And he mentioned that on Friday last week, the state treasurer drew down federal funds. So now that they're in the hands of the state treasury, those funds have 30 days to be sent out to local governments. The entitlement communities receive their monies first. Those are the towns like Carlisle, Shippensburg, and Lancaster, and so forth. We are a non-entitlement.
What does that mean exactly?
Non-entitlement means we compete for our block grant funds. We compete for all of our funds. If you're an entitlement community, Carlisle Borough is an entitlement community, so they cannot get money through the block grant funds of the county. There's about, I think, 1.4, 1.5 million that comes in. The county does not give any of that money to Carlisle, but Carlisle does get, because of its population, excuse me, and low to moderate income status, they get a direct entitlement.
That's what I thought, but
And I think they might get, several $100,000 for their program.
thanks.
So the second year of the program, which would be funding that would come to the borough next year, my suggestion is that we use it for water and sewer projects, which are fully fundable. Water, sewer, and broadband projects are fully fundable with the federal monies. And one area that we could really achieve some good work is to, I think, sit down with the authority and say, can we work together with you on coming up with a matching program? If the borough puts in 25, you put in 25. And we have $50,000 to automate our water treatment plant. What we would do here is install new motors, and these motors would be in the horsepower range of 7.5, 20, and 25 horsepower. And we would be installing variable frequency drives on this. And we've installed variable frequency drives with great success and really lowered our electrical costs. But what we can do by installing the variable frequency drives, we can tie them into the computer system that runs the water plant. So at night, when we have a thunderstorm, the lights flicker here, our water plant shuts down, which means we have to bring an operator in. And for 2 hours, and I have a rule that one operator cannot be there at night by himself, starting up. So we bring in an operator and a maintenance man for at least 2 hours. And we start the planning. And the guys could go home and another lightning bolt hits and they're back again. And that's very common. So thousands of dollars go into starting our plants. And what I'd like to do is automate our plants. We've talked to Don Arnold, who does all this work for us through Carlisle Consulting. And if we can install the variable frequency drives, upgrade the motors, we can tie it into the computer, and the computer will restart the plant for us. Would send a message to our operators, they can see all the readings, and if there's a problem, they would come in. Otherwise, the plant would go right on functioning, making water. So I think this is a very good project for the borough and for the authority to consider. It ensures reliability of water to our residents and customers. The second project is another grant to the EDA. And the reason I have suggested this, I don't see, and the Township Supervisors Association was very clear that you can't use this money for road projects or storm drainage projects. But if you give this money to an authority, the authority can use it for basically anything. So one of the things that I think council has wanted to do for many years is get a sidewalk program started. And my thought is if we could give some of the grant money with a cooperation agreement to our EDA and a cooperation agreement with state, you're being trusted to manage these funds and you would give out no interest loans to borough residents. Each loan would be up to, let's say, $3,000, maybe $3,500 set by council. It would be payable at no interest over 5 years. And it would work this way. Tim Cormany would go out. If Joey wants to put a new sidewalk in, Tim would meet with Joey and her husband. They would take measurements. The borough would have a contract where we would have unit prices from a contractor to do sidewalks, curbs, and ADA ramps. They would look at the property and say, okay, you have so much of curb and so much of sidewalk, you're going to need $2,500 to do this job. Do you agree, Mr. and Mrs. Beal? Yes. Okay, then sign this work write-up. Work write-up comes back to the EDA board. There's an agreement drawn up by the EDA solicitor that the residents will borrow money and repay it at no interest over 5 years. The EDA board approves that, and they get recorded. They get payments. There would be a temporary lien that's Mr. McKnight said on the property, so the position of the EDA is secure. And once this money is paid back, then it revolves out again to other residents. So this 30,000 continues to go year after year in helping other people. And I think it's something that we can do under the use of these funds. And then the next item that I have, and this is also in the way of a contribution to a 501c3. Now, see, we couldn't just give this money to anyone. We have to give it to 501c3. So we're fortunate that we have an EDA that's now 501c3. We have a historical or beautification society that's approved. So the last item would be something that I think would help the town. Will David was their state representative when we bought our Christmas lights the last time. I don't even know how many years ago that is.
A long time.
A long time. And so I mean, they would get all fired. But it would be nice if we could work on a new lighting display, new holiday lighting display for the town, especially in lieu of what we're trying to do to beautify the borough, bring new businesses in. I think this would be something that, would be good for the town, good for the morale of the community and so forth. And we know that last year, with all the things we did with the coat drive, the toy giveaway, Christmas is a really special time. And if we could do something like this to improve the Christmas lighting of the borough, you're not going to see these funds again for a long time. So the summaries are for 2021, we have 66,500 coming in. We have proposed project $76,500. And in 2022, we have 66,500 coming in and 66,500 going out. So your question may be, how can we ever do this in 2021 when we're, over by $10,000? Well, remember, you're going to give yourself about $56,000. And if out of that $56,000, you say, look, we will make these one-time grants to people like Enoch, ship that out of that money, and you still achieve the same. See what I'm saying? Still getting. So that's what I came up with There's any number of scenarios, the council could, come up with other ideas or want to look into other ways of funding this, and we have time, a couple housekeeping tips. When you're dealing with the federal government, when I was in college, we got to visit Lewisburg Prison.
Voluntarily, or
There were a lot of volunteers.
Part of our class requirements. And it wasn't a nice place. And the federal people take a dim view on people misspending their federal funds. So what I suggest you do is be as transparent as we can. Don't mix these monies into the general fund. When monies come in, open an account at Mid-Penn Bank, put the money in Mid-Penn Bank, write checks out from that account. If you approve a plan, pass a resolution of council saying this is where the money is going to go in these categories, so that if any time somebody wants to come in, or we are audited, and we will be audited, I'm sure of that the federal government can take a look at it and say, well, here was the plan that was approved by council, here's the money, here's the bank statement. It didn't go to highway aid, it didn't go to street lighting fund or whatever, it didn't go to the police fund, it stayed in the dedicated account, it earned interest, and then it went out for these projects that were approved by council. When it's spent, then you can close the account.
now not item number one for this year, though, that would go into the general fund.
That could, what you would do, Scott, is just write yourself a check for that amount and put it back in your bill.
Yeah, I think it's ideal to take the entire lump sum of the feds, open up the account, and only spend your money out of that account. Right. We've done that with any funds we've gotten for grants during COVID, right? It's worked out.
Right. So I think if we continue to do that, that would be the plan. And so I'm not requesting you to do anything tonight other than to think about this. And if it's acceptable to you, or if you'd like to make changes to it, we can make changes in the regular monthly.
Right, what would this, I'm sorry, what would this start coming in?
It would start it as soon as you can take receipt of the funds. And the county has now, the Commonwealth has 30 days to disperse the money.
Oh, okay. We expected this month. So we
Expected in June.
Now, we've already made a commitment to the scoreboard out of the ARA funds. It would just come out of the general fund once we pay it. This doesn't impact splash pad because we're going on different routes.
All CDBG.
And the building behind, we haven't really got the building behind the press box.
I'd like to know what it's going to cost. Right. And then we can take a look at it as a borough. Maybe we can do some of it this year and some of it next year. I don't know. But
And it could be something that we might go roll into the block grant.
I just
Or
think
to the, for the splash, with what we're doing with the splash pad.
And here's the other thing. This is the money that we know is coming to us, but there's also been awarded to the county, I believe $34 million that they're going to have to run out. And their grants out. And that will go to water and sewer and broadband and other projects. So there might be an opportunity, for another round of block grant that we could apply for the park. So I would just say, have a plan, understand the projects that you want to fund, and then as the county opens these up, let's shoot applications in. But I think if we could have a plan like this in place, we would probably be one of the few municipalities in the county that has, at this point in time, spent this much time in planning and working to meet the guidelines, keeping it all transparent, keeping the money separate. And I think we'll get through it and not have any. The one thing you don't want to do is go through this and have some real wild expenditure. The federal government comes in and says, you can't, that was wrong. Now you got to pay it back. Where do you get the money to pay it back?
I have one question for you, Fred. How is the the monthly food program going from the food bank?
I think it's going to go back to indoor very soon, possibly in a month or two. But we did make the main distribution was outdoor drive-through. I think it's going to revert back to indoors.
Can they still use funding?
Oh, it is. Yeah, they'll take funds. They have a lot more need, but at the same time, what I've heard from Mrs. Coe, they've had a lot of generous donations.
So if we gave you $500, you could always give it to the food bank.
Or I can bomb that. Try to help
There you go.
bomb that.
Well, then I think we should give them the $500. There you go.
That's what I think too. I mean, but, you know. Not being a Debbie Downer again.
All right, any other questions about that? Good plan, Fred.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
We don't want to visit you in Lewis area, no, it's down, whatever that is.
It's Lewis
Or
Burke.
one of those.
Yeah.
I think another of the Kenyans go, they started presenting. Maybe give-
You're all nice if you visit.
Kenyans real nice.
There's a great restaurant in Lewisburg.
Yeah.
Hometown of Lewisburg Hotel.
I don't know, but when we go like to Maine and stuff, we pass that, and I always, make sure the doors are like, curious, what are you doing? And I said, I don't want somebody to break out and try to get in your
Wait
vehicle.
for an orange jumpsuit to run across the road.
Yeah.
All right, anything else, admin?
We need to schedule a meeting, interview the potential civil service commission member. But other than that,
Sounds good. Can they be here, can we wrap that up by the end of the month? Let me get them on the agenda for the end of the month.
that's my goal.
Sounds good. Parks and Rec, down to you.
Yes, the letters went out. I signed last week, they went out. I got Mr. Over called me last night and said he's taking his name out. He doesn't want to be part of it. So.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Driving to, Pine Grove to the church where I spoke Sunday morning. You know, in Penn Township, near the Huntsdale hatchery, there was a place with all the signs, the farm with all the signs.
Danny, or Schaefer.
He has 2 rail cars.
He does.
How long are you doing?
Oh, my dad worked for them when he was growing up, with his dad. You know him pretty well.
Wonder if
It's
he has,
Danny's brother.
I wonder if he has a way to get rail cars.
Oh, I'm sure he does. He took the signs down because people were stealing them.
I can imagine. I was wondering why.
He's got one thing that on Parks, we were talking about this thing with Kevin Harrison. He wants to talk about that we met. I think we should get a definite thing which we want. He has his ideas, we have our ideas. I think we should come up with things that is what's going to be. Right. You know,
Get a cost estimate, you know, if we want to keep the building and remodel it, how much is it, how much?
yeah, I'd like to see if we can get that taken care of and just so we know. Because I like I said, he has all these ideas and I respect him. He's done an awesome job.
Why don't you ask him to get it finalized in the next rec meeting? Because now we've got all our summer contracts and stuff done, so,
Okay.
you know, he wasn't at the last meeting, so he doesn't know what's going on. Ask him to get that, get some numbers finalized.
Okay, I'll see you more.
Then we can start talking. And ask him too, if he could share with the commission, how much money he's bringing in from these tournaments and so forth.
Okay.
If there's any of that money that can be applied to that building.
Yeah, I had no idea what he was. When he was. I
No, I
know
don't.
he puts it back in.
I know he puts it into the field. Yeah, let's just ask. See.
Okay.
Okay,
Do you think that Mr. Schaefer would be interested in being on this committee? I mean, technically, he's in the Bixby School District.
he may be,
Mhm.
there might be something that prevents it.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
But it wouldn't hurt to ask.
But you said next one night, 14th, that's not.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yes.
So you also have either Scott Anderson or Matthew Cummings being appointed by the school district. Okay, there's a,
For the rail.
yeah, they can take. There's one other thing, Scott, I don't know if we want to discuss tonight, the
Yeah.
fill station. I think it's out on the table. I just got coffee last week and a good price.
There's 2 of them over here.
Quiet, in there too.
I
got it.
Yeah, there are two different ones.
I got it. Go ahead.
So when we originally looked at this, the cost of this item was just about $4,000. I shopped around on the internet and found a company that deals in really hospital grade equipment, institutional equipment, and lo and behold, here's the same LK wall-mounted drinking fountain. And it's set up for exterior or interior, can be weatherized. So I gave it to Rob and Dave, and Brian, and they took a look at it. You can see it's pretty simple. You got a water feed line and you got a drain line. And they went out and said, well, that's what we have right now. We've got a feed line, we've got a drain line. And so if we take the old fountain off and maybe fashion a plate of stainless steel, mounted to the building, seal it good, we should be able to get the drinking fountain up and operational in no time. So there would be no installation costs. We would not have to get Hoovers to come in and do this. Our employees would be able to do it themselves. They've looked at this, they're confident they can do it. So your only cost would be to acquire the device at a cost of $23.39 plus shipping.
Is that all year, Steve?
This, I would not say it's a winter time. It can be left out and exposed as parking lot.
But the one thing says here, freeze frost resistant now.
Now you'll have to, there's a drain on, if you open it and blow some air through, you'll be able to drain.
I'm really surprised that fountain's never torn off that wall down there. Maybe this thing.
Well, we've had somebody go inside now, they've been putting soap on the walls.
Oh, really?
And I think I've talked to our code enforcement officer and she has dealt with a neighborhood person out there. And we think it's a family member, a young family member that saw the code enforcement officer out at the grandfather's property. It's stopped now. It's completely stopped. So. And it wasn't malicious. I mean, it was soap on the wall and they hit it with water.
When do you want action on that?
Well, I mean, we could wait till the end of the month. Right now, the guys are trying to get all the painting work done. And they've got a few more weeks of painting and crosswalk. So, you know, if we order it at the June meeting, we could probably have it in 2 weeks and install. So. Okay. So.
Well, I'm just gonna say, with 4th of July coming up there, do you think that
Well,
the trails will be?
Joe, you said we're taking in some pretty good money from the soda machines this year.
Yeah.
And last year, I know we had, what, 900 some dollars in profit. So, I don't think you have all of the money from the soda machines, but maybe at the end of this year, you have 75-80% of it. But
That's fine.
I thought you're right, if you could put one of these, I mean, not everyone likes drinking out of plastic bottles. If you have a thermos, that you keep the water cool for it, people prefer that.
Well, if you were in doubt, could they install it sooner?
Yeah, we finish up, we get it a rainy day or something like that, we go out there and tear the old one off, get ready.
Why don't we get it ready for them?
Well, that,
Already now.
if we have it, then
We got the funds to do it.
we do.
And want to get the dog ball ordered this month.
Maybe just use garbage, I still don't think we
I did get an email from him, he's ready to go now, school's out, like, get started.
He had some hiccups on his end with the regional Boy Scout with his project. All right, well,
I'll make a motion that we approve purchase of this fountain for hopeful installation before the July 4th.
Second.
been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. Any extension? Motion carries. All right. Anything else, Parks and Rec?
No, that's all I have, I just want to get that soon as I can.
Anything for public safety? Okay, quality of life?
Our letters have gone out for the car show, and, I guess I have a new project to work on for the, reducing the criminalization of marijuana. So, no, that's it.
I will send you Will's number.
Okay,
That way you can have a conversation.
okay.
What is his job? Is he a boy state?
I don't know what his job is.
He's just a citizen.
Is he an older gentleman?
No, he's a late 20s,
Oh, okay.
probably, somewhere around there. Okay, anything else, quality of life?
No.
All right. Any old business? Any other new business? Looking for any. I don't see any comments. So, right there. Any future agenda items?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Randy, where's your clock? Where's your clock?
Oh, I switched positions, Ed. I wanted to see how long it would take you to notice that.
We talked about, we knew.
We're admiring your Halloween mask. The wall behind you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there's no other comments or anything like that? Need a motion to adjourn?
We'll move.
Second.
All those in favor say